It's tabletop time, I'm Dave, and today I'm going to be continuing my dive into the world of Warhammer Epic. Our previous video on the topic was super popular, but a lot of you mentioned I hadn't covered 2003's Epic Armageddon. So in today's video, with the help of our sponsor MSI and their awesome Creator Z17 laptop, I'm going to explore Epic Armageddon, all the advances since then, and how the internet still supports the game to this day. I'm going to be building a Chaos Army, my dream army in epic scale. And not only am I going to be custom sculpting a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to reimagine one of the ugliest models in Games Workshop history and completely redesign it from the ground up.
A lot of the models I'm going to be modifying before I get into my dive are created by other people and shared freely for their love and support of Epic. But I did want to give a shout out and credit to those awesome creators, and that is the Galactic Crusaders plate and boarding variant by Moonjammy on Cults 3D, Epic 40k infantry bases by Fractal Noise on Thingiverse, the Hellcrab by Cygnus Mayer on Thingiverse, finally the Demius Pattern Predators and Rhinos by MK Hand Industries on Cults 3D. Please go give them support, they're completely free creations. So the first thing I need to do to actually get started is to customize these awesome minis and make them chaosy. So I'm gonna take them into Blender, grab my laptop and get to work so I can print some models out and actually have an army to paint.
Now when moving into inventory, the basis of these were these Galactic Crusaders in Mark III and Mark IV power armor. The reason I chose these is the Iron Warriors are Chaos Undivided. They are siege masters who have strong roots back in the heresy. They don't worship a particular chaos god, and as the Chaos Legions go, are one of the less mutated and demonic. So I thought these heresy marks of armor with some 40k chaosification would be perfect. The first thing I did was grab the heresy underslung missile launcher, quickly modify that into an autocannon as appropriate for the epic rules. I made a nice autocannon drum just with some simple cylinders. Once again, the scale will make all the low detail perfectly fine. With the drum in place, I shaped and sized up a barrel and then a supporting strut underneath and flared out the end to give it that classic autocannon vibe. With the appropriate power armor marks, there were still some little changes I wanted to make these models feel more chaosy. So I went for some old school horns, sculpted them out of a path, then converted it into a mesh. I made a couple of nice horns for this guy's Mark III power armor. So with the confidence gained from making the autocannon guy, I moved across the squad of Mark IV and Mark III power armor. I added my little Iron Warriors symbol to all of their shoulder pads, and then I created different elements to make them feel appropriately chaosy. From trophy racks and spikes on their backpacks, to spikes reminiscent of the Sons of Horus on armor panels, as well as molecular bonding studs to make them feel like they're wearing that Mark V heresy pattern. All these little touches, I think, make them look unique and slightly chaosy. A special touch I was particularly proud of was making some differentiation among the sergeants. So for one of the sergeants, I converted his power fist into a lightning claw. Now sergeants technically aren't needed in Epic, but I do think it adds a little bit of cool variety to the squad to see them. Using the knowledge I'd learned making Jen's hair in our previous 3D scanning video, I also wanted to try my hand at some tiny hair. So I made a classic 40k chaos top knot. With my infantry done, I wanted to add a little bit of variance in my rhinos. I knew I'd be fielding a fair few of them and I didn't want them all to look the same. Chaos doesn't really feel like chaos when it's uniform. So for this rhino, I added a big trophy rack along the back of the vehicle, going for haphazard spikes rather than the two orderly and low spikes down the sides of the other rhino. With all these models set up, it was time to put them on the 3D printing beds.
All right, here we are, the first print. I'm excited to see how they turned out. Hopefully, okay. And I think they're fine. I'll have to get these in the queue. The tanks look awesome. All the spikes are there, which is super cool. Even the little spikes on the Chaos. I can't wait to paint it. This project's coming to life.
So let me tell you a little bit about the sponsor of this video, and very importantly, the cool bit of tech that we have been doing all our work on at the studio. This project is powered by the Creator Z17 by MSI. MSI have a Black Friday sale, so if you check out the links in our description, you'll be able to get some of their awesome tech at the best possible price. Now I've been working pretty hard with some high poly models, rendering, screen recording, and slicing all at the same time, and the Z17 has been the perfect laptop to do it on. Not only have I been able to fluidly move around the studio with all the advantages of a laptop, but I can do all of this on battery power and powered by the amazing 12th generation i9 processor. As well as this, the Z17 is boasting an RTX NVIDIA 3080 Ti graphics card, which has been able to handle any and all creative creative pressure I've put it through. And working at the Z17 for long periods of time has been a breeze. Its 16:10 golden ratio display is super easy on the eyes and perfect for creative endeavors. Not only that, it is compatible with the MSI pen, allowing you to use touchscreen sensitivity with the precision that can be given with a stylus pen. So thank you once again to MSI for sponsoring the video, and don't miss out on your chance to get involved in their Black Friday sale, available until the 30th of November. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got some more sculpting to do.
As I had briefly mentioned, the army I had chosen was Iron Warriors. As a child, I was always split between wanting to paint Alpha Legion or Iron Warriors due to their epic siege engines and obsession with giant guns. But I also think they just have a really slick paint scheme. And one of the great things about painting epic scale is it's actually deceptively easy. You do require a little bit of brush control, but broadly the painting steps are a lot simpler. To establish the base tones for my entire force, I sprayed them all black and then followed up with a silver spray at a sort of a zenithal, but mostly covering everything, just leaving a little bit of black in the recesses. And then I followed that whole thing up with a big null oil wash. With the null oil wash dry, I then applied a contrast paint, a beautiful leathery yellow. This on top of silver makes for a fantastic metallic brass. I focused this painting towards the shoulder trim, especially on that Mark III power armor, as well as a few decorative areas on the power armor of the Space Marines themselves. Move on to the iconic Iron Warriors hazard stripes. I painted yellow first on the pauldrons and left knees of each of the Space Marines before coming in with a black paint and painting black stripes across it. I especially love in recent years how Iron Warrior lore has fleshed out to include this as maybe being a bit of an indication of their dark and gritty sense of humor. After all, what should indicate danger more than a rampaging Space Marine? For some of the more interesting or impressive models such as the Chaos Lord, I painted the horns in Ushabti bone and then added a little bit of a brown wash just to dull that down. The Iron Warriors vehicles followed all the same steps, with the main difference being several of the armor panels being painted black just to differentiate them and break up the larger areas of the model. The vehicles also had tracks, which I painted in a somber grey, which is a slightly blue grey, just to once again separate them from the other areas of the model. So moving to expand my army, it was time to include those Defilers. They've always been a classic favorite of mine in 40k, and one of the models that got me into the army when I was a kid. So to not include them, now that would be heresy. But while the Defilers were as simple as setting them up to print, the Predators would need the same love and treatment that my Rhinos got. Predators have this awkward issue of having a really low turret, so if you stick Chaos Spikes or trophies anywhere on the hull, the tank turret wouldn't actually be able to rotate without at least breaking them. So instead of that, I extruded some trim sections and added spikes and trophies to the turret itself. And then I placed my pre-made Iron Warrior symbol right on the center and top of the tank.
So my tank company has printed overnight and it's time to see how they printed. All right, so it looks like all the tanks that I modified have all printed perfectly, which is pretty good.
So all these models printed and the tank battalion has come out really well. Now it's worth mentioning what I'm building for. So the version of the game I'm building for is one I didn't talk about in my last video. It's Epic Armageddon, which was an edition of the game that came out in 2003 and the last edition of Epic that we would see. Now the rules have long since been abandoned but have been widely picked up by the community in something called Net Epic Armageddon or Net EA. There's some great compendiums of rules, both official and player made, and a really active fan base of people trying to keep this game alive. And I only hope this video sheds some light on that and shows people an avenue that they can still enjoy this great game. So with this in mind, I'm building a Predator detachment of 6 Predators and adding a Defiler onto that as well for rule of cool. The vehicles were painted in much the same way as the infantry, so I don't need to go into that too much. One of the interesting curiosities about Epic Armageddon is that the armies supported represent individual factions as deployed in narrative campaigns, which means means the official lists are quite limited, with Chaos Space Marines in this edition of Epic only being represented as the Black Legion officially. However, there are a whole bunch of experimental rules created by forums and net EA communities for all kinds of other Chaos forces, including Iron Warriors. However, to keep it simple and official, this army is being built under the Black Legion rules. Looking at and painting all of these vehicles has been a real treat, and there's something fun and satisfying about painting at this scale. You rapidly get to see your army build on the tabletop in an incredibly satisfying way, and this is actually inspiring me to delve into the final part of this video, which is redesigning something that has been abandoned by Games Workshop for a long time.
So Jen, I wanted to reimagine a demon engine from the earliest days of Warhammer Epic, and I've brought up on the screen here a selection. I have a short list, and I have a feeling you're going to agree. I wanted to pick kind of the derpiest one. What do you think of the Doom Blaster?
It looks like it was made out of Plater.
This is in need of that video game remaster.
It needs to glow up desperately.
I'm gonna do it.
So when it came to sculpting the Doomcrawler, I wanted to share and leave my mark on the Warhammer Epic community and all the amazing people who support it. But in my head, I wanted to make a chassis that can be used for the Doomcrawler, makes sense for the giant mortars that are described, but I also wanted this chassis to be usable for the Chaos Decimator. This is an old super heavy tank in Epic that has rules but never got a model, and is supposedly comparable to a chunky early precursor to tanks like the Baneblade. So with that in mind, I started big. I definitely wanted to keep the design true to the original design, but add detail and complexity, also slightly tweak areas to make it look a little bit less dorky. The next thing I needed for this model was a giant skull, and I'm not so good at organic modeling, or it's something I'm new to. So this was a bit of a process, diving into the sculpt mode and just going ham. Thankfully, at the scale this is being printed, it should be fairly forgiving. And now you can see what this tank would look like if I actually built it 100% true to design. Oh my gosh. Keeping with the homage to the original design, not completely changing it, making it a little bit less silly, I shrunk the giant skull down to a more acceptable degree. Now, don't worry, I still think this is ludicrously big and very 40k silly, but I do think I can work around a comically large skull of this size. The main idea I had to improve the design of the skull on the front of this vehicle was to actually integrate it with the functionality of the vehicle to make it feel very 40k. And to do this, I cram-packed its eyes with lenses. This is of course the seeing apparatus with which the demon engine observes the world around it. Now, big, chunky, true to design barreled mortars aren't particularly visually interesting. After all, it's basically a metal tube that fires a shot out. But I gave them a little bit more design by giving them a support strut as well as some bands around the outside. Doom tubes assembled, I could duplicate and place them, and now we're really starting to see a vibe of how this model is going to come together. But I was not done there. I wanted to make a Khorne blood and skull reactor, some kind of vat that accumulates warp energy and powers these mortars, maybe manifesting shells in the barrels out of solidified blood. Something suitably 80s death metal and Games Workshop. Now, how does this warp engine of hell channel its evil skull blood energy into these giant guns? Well, with pipes and conduits, of course. So I created a central channel running down the middle of the vehicle and then used paths to create a whole bunch of tubes that effectively connect all the relevant elements of the model. So the vehicle is now done except for the final step. In the rules, the Doomcrawler has these scything blades and the model has some pretty sketchy looking crab claws just sort of glued onto the front of it. Now I get it, pincers are cool, crabs are cool, and all things eventually lead to crab. But I gotta be honest, it doesn't feel particularly realistic for a tank. So instead I thought, well, it's a scything death blade on the front of the vehicle. What's a great way to represent that? So we're going with a death roller. You do not want to get trapped under this thing. I imagine the vehicle can lower it and raise it slightly to allow it to ford small gaps or just mince people. It's choice. Oh my, I love old school 40k. Now while the death roller is cool and it's probably more realistic, I said I wanted to be really true to this model. So I added one last touch of derpy 90s glory in the form of some big scything blades to cover out that wheel space and kind of add a little touch of the original silhouette back into the model.
Jen!
Hey.
Welcome, pull up a chair, pull up a chair. Now, I have reimagined it. Here is my Doom Blaster.
Oh my goodness. You did this all yourself?
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's so good. You've kept so much of the detail from the original model, but like modernized it, and it looks really chaosy. Like as soon as I saw it, I'm just like, this looks like a chaos model, 100%.
Now, all right, so I couldn't resist. I came in straight away and checked out my print, and I've got to say, I'm really excited. This is technically the first thing I've ever fully sculpted. I've made bits, I've made guns, helmets, shoulders, all that kind of stuff, but I've never made like a full thing. It looks like it printed. It looks, it's there, it's huge, it's bigger than I thought, but that's kind of cool. The detail is looking good. I've turned the stupid skull tank into something cool, I think. What do you think? I think it's cool in like a retro way.
So the Doom Crawler printed fantastically, and I've got to say at this stage, seeing it in my hand and at this scale, I'm really proud of what I've made. When painting this model, which is a bit larger, I did want to take a little bit more time and incorporate a few more colors. So while broadly I go through the same steps as I have for the previous two models, I just wanted to let you know that I also added a couple of final layer steps, especially to the bone of the skull. I also incorporated new colors in the form of Flesh Terror's red contrast to some of the Khorne symbols. Other than that, there was one additional color, which was Gore Grunter Fur, a very nice rustic orangey color that when put over metal looks like a fantastic bronze. And with all these additional colors in place, as well as some nice blood technicals towards the end, that pretty much covers how I painted up this Doom Crawler. Holding this in my hand feels really surreal. It feels to me like I'm holding part of Warhammer's history, even though it was something I, well, made up. I made it. Conceptually, of course, the design was based off an original model, but this entire thing was sculpted by me, and really, I think if you look at them side by side, is a different enough reimagining to feel a bit like its own thing. I would love to hear what people who were around for the original releases of Epic think of my vehicle. If you all love this or you think it's cool, guess what? We're gonna make it available completely free on Tabletop Time's website. The link will be in the description down below, and if you want to go there and grab it as an STL, forgive me if the supports are a bit janky. It's a Dave homebrew. It's not a professionally supported model. But yeah, it'll be completely free, so you can grab it and print it and have fun with it. Anyway, that's enough talking for me. I think it's time that we check out my army and we look at some of those stylish reveals.
This is so cool. I really like it. I'm really happy with it. It's fun to have a little army of this scale, and I feel like with Epic, I'm only just getting started. Thank you to all our patrons for your wonderful support. It is only due to your support that we can put out 2 videos a week. If you're interested in joining our Patreon and joining the gang, sign on up. Get access to our exclusive mini Discord, monthly mini reviews, and more. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you very much to MSI for sponsoring the video. Your laptop helped me power through, and I couldn't have done it without you. It's been grand. I'm gonna go now, so I've got tiny little toys to play with, so bye.